All right, so Taiwan Semi, does that completely alleviate all concerns about chips, trade wars, export controls, tariffs, et cetera?
Yeah, pack it up. There's nothing to see here. No, I mean, we are in a stage where this is going to just keep unfolding step by step. I think it's very much going to be specific to the company. Taiwan Semiconductor is one of my favorite companies, and it also has this really interesting sort of history where they've been having to walk these tightropes between the US and China for far longer than a lot of their competitors. So I suspect that they've gotten really good at it and that they're going to be able to figure it out. Not to mention that no matter how anyone feels about a specific name or a specific tariff situation, Taiwan Semiconductor is just a really unique part of the ecosystem that is almost impossible in the short term to replicate.
Okay, fair enough. I asked another guest about this earlier. So if you look since the tariffs were implemented, the tech sector itself is down about 7%. Chips are down even more. They're down about 9%. Is there a catalyst coming up that can either move the chip sector up or down in your mind? Obviously, we have earnings. NVIDIA earnings are always a big mover for the chip sector. But are there any other things that will give either one of those sectors any clear direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think that besides earnings and besides what the companies themselves are doing, what you're going to see as a catalyst is what the administration does, is what the White House does, is what Beijing does. And so, we saw news this morning that that Jensen Huang from NVIDIA is apparently in Beijing, according to Chinese state media right now. So these CEOs now have a tremendous amount of demand, a tremendous amount of innovation and supply chain issues, and they also have two of the biggest governments in the world that are in an insanely intractable trade war that they have to figure out how to placate.
Also, the idea here is that the so-called exemption, exception, whatever you want to call it, Trump administration has pushed back on either one of those words. That is going to come to an end potentially soon. What does that do to the chip sector? Once that happens, either way, if they decide to put tariffs on it, don't decide to put tariffs on it, I mean, does that give, again, direction to these two different areas for both tech and chips? Does that give some sense of clarity once we have that? Or are there still more questions about demand, the economy, global trade, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in a long-term trend, these are not companies you can replace incredibly quickly. They don't have sort of domestic-only supply chains in either countries that can kind of just step in. China certainly has Huawei, which is trying to become an NVIDIA, but certainly not there yet. And the U.S. just does not have the manufacturing capabilities yet, or the supply chain capabilities to do this without a global supply chain. And so I think that it's going to be kind of tough road ahead, which could be an amazing sort of buying opportunity for some of these names. But I also think that the chip sector is not the same as the overall tech sector. I'm much more bullish on most of the chip names right now than I am, on some of the tech sector where there are sort of self-inflicted problems that have nothing to do with global trade, like the Teslas of the world.
Well, speaking of that, you're saying, talking about what you're bullish on, what you like right now, you say Alphabet is actually, I don't know if it's a safe haven, but you're saying it's a company that you believe has a lot less exposure to tariffs and has a potential upside trend from here.
Exactly. Yeah. They don't have much hardware to tariff, and they don't have a social media network to sort of drive controversy, and they're well poised, I think, with Gemini in the AI wars. My concern, my question is they've done so well recently and they've really high expectations going into this earnings season. One, will they be able to reach those expectations? The street hates a miss. And then two, on a longer term, they do need to figure out what they do as search revenue declines, because even if they're winning with Gemini, Gen AI, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're figuring out how to monetize it in the same way as they've monetized search revenue. So if they can figure out what that revenue stream looks like, I think it's a screaming buy sort of long term. And in the shorter term, I think it's a really interesting position because there's just not a ton of stuff right now that's going to be as inoculated, that's a growth stock and that's as sort of well priced as Alphabet.
Is there another part of the tech sector you just don't like? I know a lot of people are raising questions about data centers with the idea that there's going to be less data center demand. Also, data centers are especially sensitive to some of these tariffs, whether it be chips or copper or aluminum, et cetera. Whether it's data centers or some other part, is there some other part you're just saying as a tech investor you may want to stay away from, at least for now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike data centers. I just think that there was this moment where they got really overhyped, and I know that I'm not the only person who saw that and sort of commented on that. I think that data centers are good. We need some of them. They're not going to be this catalyst for jobs, for revenue in the shorter term that people were sort of treating them as. They're not car factories. So that's not an area that I would sort of over allocate to right now. Although with the push to build more and manufacture more in the US, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of them, because it is a great way to sort of let DC know for some of these companies, hey, we hear you, we see you. Here's an empty data center that might be online in a few years.